Hi, my name is Tom Skarlinski. I'm a USDA identifier in the Port of Miami. I also specialize in identifying Thysanoptera. Alrighty, we've got another unknown we need to identify. We use our shortened NPDN training video Thysanoptera key. Let's go ahead and start on couplet 1. Terminal abdominal segment tubular. All right, let's take a look at our unknown here. Well, right there in that area. Is it tubular or conical? I think we would all agree that it's conical. It's not tubular. You can see the sides are kind of narrowed. It's like an upside down cone. Let's take a look at our ovipositor. It's pretty obvious there. It's right out, right in this area. It's a nice long ovipositor. Okay, our ovipositor is right here. Got nice serrations. So, and as a last check, make sure we don't have something new or different. We have venals, longitudinal veins there with CD on them. We get the wings folded down a little bit. So everything seems to be pointed towards Terebrantia. So it looks like we have our unknown is from the suborder Terebrantia. So let's go ahead and we'll move to the next couplet. Antennal segments, are they simple, emergent simple, or emergent forked? Or the opposing couplet, are they actually part of the antennal segment itself, as if like incorporated? And, well, they look like they're an emergent, meaning that they're not actually part of, incorporated into the antennal segment. So you can see that it's emergent. It's right here. It looks kind of like, I always use like bull's horns. It's shaped like a U or a V. And you have to shift back and forth in your focal planes a lot of times because it's never, very rarely do they lie on the same focal plane, but here's one right here. We'll focus there, and boom, boom. All right, let's take a quick look at the opposing character or condition. Sensory structures that are actually the longitudinal or the non-emergent. Here on antennal segment 3 and 4, you see there, you see these worm-like structures that are actually part of the antennal segment right here. It extends from here to the end. This one kind of recurves over to the top, but they're actually part of the actual antennal segment. They're not emerging from it. So let's go ahead and move on to couplet 9. Are our legs covered with transverse microtrachea? Now let's go ahead and focus in. That can be any part of the legs. It can be the femur, tibia, but let's go ahead and we'll use this femur right here. And right here we can see, let's just do a little bit of, here's our tarsus, here's our tibia, and let's go ahead and and then right over here's our femur. I think we're actually on the mid leg. So here's our hind legs. So let's go ahead and just check real quick. We do have some lines of sculpture, transverse lines of sculpture. You could almost say, well, there's a little reticulation going on there, but not particularly. But there's not any fine hairs going from this direction to this direction at all. Okay, let's just take a look at the femur on this specimen that actually has that character state. And you can see it has the transverse lines of sculpture. You know, there's some nice lines there. But you notice these small lines here. These are actually those microtrachea, the CD, that are on these. Okay, here we are with our unknown. We've pretty much we've figured out our legs. They don't have microtrachea on them, or at least rows of the microtrachea. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the metathoracic end of Furka, and that's this structure right here. That's this part right here. And just so FYI, this is the spinula, this area right here. So our opposing couplet's asking, is this really enlarged? Does this structure extend all the way up into the mesonotum? So let's go ahead and orient ourselves. This area right here on our specimen is the mesonotum. This is the metanotum. And the structure we're looking for is actually on the other side. So let's go ahead and we'll change our focal plane to the ventral side. Here it is, and if you remember that the metanotum was up in here, so we're not even, and the mesonotum is even further anterior, so these arms, this structure does not reach up into this area. Okay, here's an example of the opposing part of our couplet, and here's this metathoracic end of Furka, and you can see that it's very long, and it extends much further up into the insect. Ours didn't, but here's an example. Also on this particular one, you notice these large other arms or apodemes. These are actually muscular attachments, and it helps this subfamily in jumping. Okay, moving along, that we've covered the metathoracic end of Furka, and let's just take a quick look at the antennal segments. And while we're up there, we might as well just go ahead and make an antennal segment count. Let's see if we can adjust the focus so we can get the entire antenna in our field of view. We'll go ahead and focus as we move our way from basally to the apically. So we have the antennal segment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8. But let's go ahead and jump up to 400 times magnification, because they get kind of small there, and let's make sure we're actually counting right. So yes, we do have, this would be the 7th and the 8th antennal segment. In the couplet it says the antennal segment long is long and acute, the terminal antennal segment. This is long. Is it acute? I would say no. Acute would mean it'd be almost like the shape of one of these CD. It comes to a very fine, almost a flagellate point. So let's go ahead and move on to couplet 11. Head and legs, usually with reticulate sculpture. You can almost see that that's going on here. We're only at, I'm thinking about 50 times magnification, and we can almost, you can start to see these reticulate sculpture on the head. It's a little difficult to see if there's any on the legs, so let's go ahead and raise our magnification up to 100 times. And we can clearly see now there's reticulation, or these little closed cells all over the head. And this thing that has almost like a not a rugose appearance, but I call it an alligator appearance. It's kind of rough looking. Let's see if we've got any reticulation on the leg. I can see reticulation there on the bottom part. You see right in here. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at the femur. You can see there's reticulation on the femur as well. Let's look at that last antennal segment. What we want to look for, is it really long and acute? Does it come to a fine point? Well, I'd say that's pretty much long and acute. Here it comes and it gets very narrowed, almost like it's like a CD on there. So, okay, let's take a look at the head of the unknown. And it does have some striations, transverse striations on the head, but it's clearly not reticulate. Let's go ahead and check out the legs, see if there's anything going on in the legs. And I'm not seeing any reticulation there as well. And we had visited the legs previously, remember, when we were looking at whether or not there was microtrachea on the legs. And oftentimes these are things you can take note of as you're doing this, so you don't have to go back. I'm always kind of like looking over the specimen and try to memorize some of the things that I'm looking at, quick counts on the antennal segments and other things, and that way when I don't have to go back and look at them. So we don't have reticulate sculpture going on, and body's pretty smooth. A lot of you notice right away there's a lot of microtrachea there on the lateral margins. Let's slow down here and try to. So we have some microtrachea going there, but for the most part it's smooth. It's not rough, the surface. So, and our terminal antennal segment is not acute like we saw previous. It's somewhat rounded on the end. It doesn't come to a fine point. So let's go ahead and we can move on. We're pretty sure that we're not in the Pankito-Thripini. So let's go ahead. We are in the Thripini. So let's go to the next couplet. We've already established, and let's go ahead and take a look at it again. The abdomen, the tergites, they have rows of fine microtrachea. Well, there they are. We have already established that. The S1 CD of abdominal sternite 7 on posterior margin. Now, the only reason that I added this in the couplet actually is because oftentimes which would be eliminated in this, but it's a nice check to make sure you don't have another genus, Neohydatothripс. Is there, if you see, when I'm talking about the S1 CD, I'm talking about this CD and this one. These are the S1s on the sternite, S, I guess, for sternite. Different authors use different things. Some say V for ventral. You can get it, I guess, as long as the author is explaining what they mean, we're fine. It doesn't always have to be uniform from author to author. But you notice this S1 CD is right on the margin here of the sternite. There are other ones that these CD are somewhat forward, and you might find them in this area. And it is so this is kind of a nice safety check to say, okay, they should be on the margin and not just slightly interior. It's not the easiest to see all the time because you have to have a clear specimen sometimes to get, you're going to be mounting this thing dorsal ventral with the dorsal at the top and the ventral below, and if there's stuff and junk in there, you're not going to be able to see this. So we've pretty much our S1 on the sternite number 7 is at the margin. Let's go ahead and look at the marginal cilia, the fine hairs on on the forewing. And this one is kind of hard to see, but we'll focus in and out. But basically what we're looking for, are these straight or are they kind of ruffled? So these hind cilia, they look pretty straight to me. When the other ones, the other opposing that you might see in this particular one, they'd be wavy actually. Instead, these would kind of be wavy. So this obviously, these are straight and these are not wavy, these CD. Let's go ahead and take, it's starting to look like we might have Scirtothrips dorsalis here, but we don't want to jump to conclusions. And so let's go ahead and look at these, the lateral microtrachea fields of, well, actually I skipped one. Let's go over here to the ocellar CD3, are between the posterior ocelli. So let's go ahead and, well, we should have done that when we were up there earlier in the head area, but since we're not being very efficient here, but here we go. There's our ocellar CD3. These two CD right here. This is the ocellar CD3 pair. We'll go ahead and give you this one. This is ocellar CD pair number 1. These ones out laterative and posterior there. These are ocellar CD number 2, pair 2. As oftentimes this is the triangle, not the Bermuda Triangle, but the ocellar triangle. And this is a diagnostic, the position of these CDs, and it's very diagnostic, but you notice they're in between those posterior ocelli. So we've hit that one nail on the head too. So let's go ahead and see if we can, are the lateral microtracheal fields. All right, what are the lateral microtracheal fields? Well, here's our little field of microtrachea, and then there's no microtrachea over here. So we have this field. I guess maybe they mowed this one here, but we have our microtrachea field. So what we're looking for, are there discal CD in here? So we have one, and it is at the margin, it's still on the edge of the field, and it's in the center. 1, 2, and let's see if we can pull out another one there. Let's move over to another. So right now we've got 2, so let's go down. And how about here? 1, 2, and there's a third one right there. It's tough to see. You have to change the focal plane to be able to capture that. There are species that have more than that. There are species that have 4. There are some that have 2. We have 1, 2, and then the third one's here. So we have 3 discal CD in there. And abdominal tergates, usually with dark anteromedial shading. Holy smokes, this is great. I like when that happens. And believe it or not, I think we've got Scirtothrips dorsalis here. A note that sometimes this anterior medial shading, this darkened area, it's not always apparent, and sometimes you get specimens that are recently molted, and they haven't had time to sclerotize. And as a rule of thumb, you can get a single specimen, and it may be very light. So color is difficult, but when you look at large populations and a lot of populations, you're going to see quite a bit of a variation. You're going to have some that are molting or that have molted, and they're kind of in a teneral condition. They haven't really sclerotized, and oftentimes, actually, historically, I mean, there's a lot of species that have been named new species, and it's based on a teneral specimen. You know, so then somebody has to come along and figure that out later, and then synonymize it with whatever it should be. So, but we do have Scirtothrips dorsalis, and thank you very much.